I just wanted to add one other thing. I went to a meeting yesterday with many of the restaurant owners in Baker City, and they have been, some of them have been hugely impacted by this, just because of people not trusting the water. And remember back in the old days where you just sit down at the table and they'd bring you a glass of iced water? Well, that's not happening now. So they have been hugely impacted. And the environmental health that inspects all of the eateries in town was at the meeting. And he just wanted me to get the word out that he has gone around, he has talked to every restaurant in Baker City that puts food out to the public, and they're all safe. If they weren't safe, he would close them down. They're all properly washing their dishes. They're properly washing their hands. They're using bottled water. Many of them have high temperature dishwashers that get up to 180 degrees and kill everything. And so all the restaurants in Baker City are safe. And I mean, they have to be. They don't want to make people sick, so they've gone over and above the standards that these guys give them, and it's costing them a lot of money. So the message that they wanted me to give to everybody I talk to is go out and eat.
Tanya Diaz, 4100 Indiana. And I'm probably going to stumble over this a little bit because I have so many questions running around in my head. But
can't hear you.
Sorry, there's only potentially 2 people on the city council that can answer this question because Mr. Dorrah strangely isn't here tonight. And so I guess Mr. Coles is going to potentially have to answer this, but I'd like to know, and I think a lot of people would like to know, why back in 2011 we knew that there was crypto in the city water, and you and Mr. Dorrah in particular were adamant about asking for a variance from the state, and otherwise we would potentially already have the UV plant online now.
Well, first, I don't believe that UV is the total answer, and that's pretty well been said, 99.9%. I just don't buy into it. There was really no support for filtration. Really, filtration is the end result down the road. And the other reason is because I will not rubber stamp just because staff sends something across the desk. I won't do it. And I'm not going to jump on the first wagon in town. Now, just this week we have found out there is some comments being made through a website about sand filtration, which I was going to ask our state man. So I can't speak for Mr. Dorrah, I'll just speak for myself. I won't rubber stamp anything, and I'm not totally sold on it. The mayor covered it, and I don't know how many of you folks read the paper last night. I'm rather outspoken, it's the way it is. You should go back and read about Ben. I said in the paper the other night that I'm dissatisfied that it wasn't tested. Let me just read something if you haven't. Unlike Baker City, Ben employees test every month for Cryptosporidium in the Bridge Creek watershed. We're not required to, but we're just doing the best management practices and our due diligence, Parasic said. A city worker collected the latest 10-liter sample early Monday and sent it overnight to a laboratory in Grants Pass. The city began testing for the microorganism on a Monday basis in December of 2005, as required by the federal drinking water treatment rule. The 2-year sampling period ended in January 2008. But the city continued to test its water and found the microorganism a total of 7 times since 2005. We did not have any hits for Cryptosporidium last year, Prasic said, nor has the city found any evidence of Cryptosporidium so far this year. They're in the same situation the city of Baker. So I'll go back and say, like I did, I'm not sold on UV. To be criticized because I didn't take a stance or vote, that's fine. Public has that right to criticize an elected official. That's fine. And there was really no support again for the filtration. And again, I will not rubber stamp for anybody. And I'm not going to get on the first wagon out of town. I have not had the trust in the driver of the truck.
So you're saying that you do not trust the city staff to come to you with recommendations, is that correct?
Excuse me?
You're saying that you don't trust the city staff that comes to you with recommendations?
I question.
Okay, so they came to you and they said, we have crypto in our water, and these are our options, and it was the decision of the council to ask for a variance to not put in a UV plant for 2 years.
I think the majority of the council went that correct. What?
Excuse me? I'm just asking a question. I have the right to ask a question. I'm just curious as to, why, if you knew it was in the water and you knew it was a problem and you're concerned with the citizens, why ask for a variance when you're going to put in the UV plant anyway? So, I have a hard time buying that I don't go for the UV plant thing. I mean, that's fine. That doesn't make any sense. Your answer doesn't make any sense, really.
Well, that's fine. It's the way I see it.
The UV plant is nothing more than a Band-Aid. The UV plant will kill the Cryptosporidium.
Actually, no, it sterilizes it. It doesn't kill it.
Well, it sterilizes it. Eventually, Baker City will be forced into filtering their water, just like Portland. I think Baker and Portland and one other place are the only 3 in the state that don't filter their water.
So is the filtration system more expensive than the UV, and that's why we're not going for the
Hugely.
filtration?
UV system costs
$16 million.
$800 a year to operate.
At least.
How much does the UV system cost to operate a year?
When we did this study back in 2009, looking for our options, at that point, there was an estimated cost of around a $15 million. I don't have the document in front of me, I'm sorry.
It was $17.7 million.
And we looked at operational costs of something like a membrane filtration plant, the need to run it with the power and change the filters and those types of things. That was closer to the $300,000 a year mark. So it is substantially more expensive than UV,
Now,
but it's a different type of treatment.
Right, the filtration plant is $17,300,000 a year to operate.
No, that's a capital cost. And then $13 million to maintain UV,
Perhaps
$332 million to maintain filtration. That was in the figures presented to the city back in 2009.
What a cost difference, that's where the city has looked at the UV.
Yeah, it's a huge difference in maintenance costs. Plus, the skill level of the operator is advanced with filtration and basic with UV. UV gets to the 99.9 at a cost that's significantly less than somebody's filtration system that could, bring its own set of problems. In fact, they do. So, anyway.
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
Could you go over that, if it says a Band-Aid, why are we buying a Band-Aid? I don't understand that. I thought it was permanent.
No, UV will not be a permanent solution to the problem. UV will be something that hopefully we'll be able to use long enough to make it cost effective. And at some point down the line, DEQ will require us to have a different system.
Well, DEQ's pushing for filtration, correct?
DEQ wants everybody for filtration this week, yes.
Well, does it make sense to spend $16 million on UV and then turn around and have to buy the filtration system?
Actually, it does. If it amortizes itself out, it does make sense because in the, let's say that we can use the UV system for the next 15 years. Over the next 15 years, technology will come up with much better filtration systems, much more cost-effective, much easier to operate.
And what happens if in 2 years the watershed catches on fire and we don't have any viable water solutions, and filtration would have solved that problem?
Well,
Which almost happened, I remember that.
then we would
It will
look back
happen.
and say, damn, we should have put in another well.
Or maybe we should have bought filtration.
No, membrane filtration will not survive a fire in the watershed without additional
No, I'm not talking
filtration
membrane.
for settling
There are
facilities.
I'm talking
actually
this
existing
cartridge
wells
filtration, like
that
what
the
Pilsen has.
city could purchase.
Okay, that's a whole
Right, so
different
we've
story, but
already
even
got-
cartridges
we
will be
already
filled
have
with the same
wells that
stuff,
we're looking
ash and
at
everything else.
that are in existence, and we're looking at, in one case, acquiring some rights, and in another, just transferring that water. So that's a possibility. Each well would be different based on how deep you have to go and all of that. So there's some variables in that, but certainly that's another opportunity that we can look at. Again, it's not an immediate solution. We would have to look outside the existing aquifer most likely for
So
other
a
wells.
follow-up question is if DEQ is going to eventually require us to do a filtration system for surface water, is that filtration system going to be required if we drill a well in which all of our water is supplied eventually by wells, and none of them show any crypto presence? Would we still have to have a filtration system? I can't imagine a well costing $16 million.
Okay, so wells are considered groundwater and not susceptible to contamination by Cryptosporidium or other parasites or bacteria, and does not require filtration. So yeah, there's a lot of water systems in Eastern Oregon that rely solely on wells, and they do not filter. In fact, a lot of them do not even chlorine at all. Also, as to the question is whether the state would require the city to install filtration at some point, there's nothing in the current rules that would require that at any point in the future, okay?
Can I get it in writing, a guarantee that you won't require us to do it in the next 5 years?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch all that, but the rules do change. EPA can produce new rules, and typically they are more stringent. They get more strict. So, but it would be really just speculation to say whether that would be a requirement in the future or not.
So could you kill that rumor right now? Because it is essentially fear-mongering about the future, speculation completely unproven, unknown, and you're telling it's not you, but others are telling these people that somehow they face a mandate for filtration, expensive membrane filtration. You don't.
Well, okay, it is possible.
Of course.
It is possible that it could be required because currently the city has an exemption from filtering the water from the surface sources, okay?
Mm-hmm.
After things settle down and the boil order is lifted and under control, our agency is going to review that.
Okay.
And again, I don't want to speculate as to whether we would require filtration or not, but it will be reviewed. So it is possible that we could require filtration to be installed. But I can't say, have we started to review that yet? At some point in the future.
But right now it is not.
Correct. Right
Yeah.
now, there is no requirement to install filtration.
Yeah.
No question, Mayor.
So when is that review going to take place? Because we're going to be, City Council's going to be talking about this in the next meeting, 2 meetings, 3. This is not something we're going to put away until we figure out how we can move this issue up and start working on it immediately, get something in place as soon as possible. And we're all going to be talking about filtration versus UV. When are we going to know? If you're going to, if our exemption is going to be reviewed, when is there gonna be a decision? We don't wanna come up with a decision to go with UV and then have our exemption removed. So, can we get some kind of a timeline on that? Because I mean, you've heard the urgency, right?
Oh, I
So
understand.
we gotta
I understand.
get,
It could completely
going.
impact your decision making. I understand that. We're going to start reviewing that. Okay, I understand that that is going to significantly impact your decision making and everything else. So we'll start looking at that as soon as the more immediate issue of the boil water is settled down, the boil's lifted, we have some testing in place. We're going to start reviewing that. Shortly afterwards, you know, I don't want to give you like a firm timeline, but it should be a matter, if I had to guess, I would say a couple months maybe. It shouldn't be 6 months or a year for sure. We should look at the situation as a whole and come to a decision on that within a couple months. That's a ballpark estimate.
So should we wait to come up with it? It's just frustrating. Should we
Yeah.
wait to come up to know that we're going to wait 6 months to a year to find out if that exemption's going to be lifted? That's a long time.
Right. No, I'm sure it'll be shorter than that. Like I said, my estimate is maybe a couple of months after things get under control. Yeah.
Okay, let's say that they don't come back and say that they come back and say we don't need to filter our water. What kind of a guarantee would we get on how long we'd have without filtering our water?
Well, that exemption, frankly, there has always been some degree of risk of losing that. Someone else mentioned if there's a fire in the watershed, one of the criteria for maintaining that exemption is continued low turbidity in the drinking water, which is a measurement of the particulates and basically the cloudiness of the water. And right now, the watershed produces low turbidity water. In the event of a fire, may not be able to do so. And that could cause the exemption to go away.
So you can see the problems that the council has to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And possibly, you know, a well is what the city needs to look at right now.
You know, I actually have a question on that. I haven't ever heard anybody talking about the well before, of adding more. I've heard a lot of filtration. Is there a possibility of then having plenty of water with wells? And if so, why haven't we done it?
I asked that question just anecdotally. Dave, I don't know if you remember, we had the water master at one of our meetings not long ago, and I asked her about groundwater. This valley has changed so much with irrigation and wells, and so groundwater is being used to the point, the same way surface water is. And there's only a certain amount of it, and they only issue so many permits to take so much water from the ground. So I asked that question. I told her that we used about 6 million gallons a day. Could the city ever drill enough wells to provide that much water? And she told me no. Now, that was just anecdotally in a meeting, so I would want to sit down and talk more with her about that. So what we're exploring now is existing wells, and the city has a couple, but they're not great water. They're what's that? Iron manganese, and it's stinky, and it can stain clothes. And so, we're used to pretty good water in Baker City, so we're trying to stay away from that. There's another well out here at the edge of town that's been used for irrigation. I'm in negotiations with that owner to, make that available, and it's a good well. And it would supplement our system.
Okay, so well water would be another just bit of a Band-Aid.
Yep.
Okay. Now, while you're getting that over here, I got a question that I thought about for you. And I just want to know. When you first suspected that the city water was to blame and you were doing all the testing, and I understand all that, did you immediately switch over to the well?
I think we were using well water before we knew.
Okay, so you had switched over to the well?
But, you know, the well's a limited source.
No, I understand that. I was just hoping that would be the answer.
Yeah.
Because that's the right answer. You don't just continue to, yeah, I think the water's dirty, let's continue to pull it out of here. No, so that
We didn't do that.
I actually commend you for that.
That's the first right thing I've done today. Thank you.
I would like to point out the part about fire in the watershed. Because we have a number of different sources scattered over different areas in the mountains, if we had a fire in part of the watershed, that part could be shut off until the turbidity level from that source dropped. So a fire would not necessarily put us into a situation where we could only do filtration. That's also, when we use the well, we're not just using the well alone. We are using other sources of water mixed in. And these concentrations of spores, you have to understand, when we were testing the water at the delivery system or at the raw reservoir up on Indiana, you're looking at a diluted situation. You've got a number of different sources. If one has no Cryptosporidium, it is diluting the water from one that has more. So it's a matter of statistics and trying to pin down the science to say what is safe or what isn't.
Well, I don't think we answered everybody's questions tonight. I think we made a good effort. I hope that people understand a little bit more about what the city's been going through the last week to try to get this problem identified and isolated, and we're still working on it. So hopefully by next week, we will have a lot more concrete answers for the newspapers to report to everybody. I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. This is a huge problem in our community, and I want to thank the high school for allowing us to hold the meeting here so that more people could attend. Thank you for coming.